Alright, so this video is going to get you started on the surface area of prisms and cylinders reteach, that class kick assignment. And that class kick assignment is going to help you with the test next Monday. So it's a retest. So if you didn't score well on the last test, the surface area 8th version, then this test will replace that grade and the other first test over surface area. All right, so getting into surface area, so let's take a look at number 1. So these are the steps I created, steps to solving surface area. The first thing you need to ask yourself is, do we have a prism or do we have a cylinder? Because that's what's given to us on the star chart. So for surface area, so we're just looking at either prism or cylinder. So they give us prism or cylinder. So we have a prism, and more specifically, we have a triangular prism. So that means we're going to be looking at this row right here. So we're going to be dealing with pH or pH plus 2b, not down here, pH. Then it's going to ask, is the question asking for lateral or is it asking for total surface area? So remember, lateral doesn't include the bases. Total surface area, of course, is the total sides, including the bases. So looking at this first one, we're looking for both. We're looking for lateral and we're looking for total. So that means, take a look at step 3, which is copy down formula on paper. So since we're going to look for lateral first, I'm going to go ahead and just write it right here. So that's on our star chart. So looking at our star chart, we're dealing with a prism. Lateral is S equals pH. And total is S equals pH plus 2b. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer this to this paper over here. So we're going to start with lateral. This is number 1. And we're dealing with lateral. So that's S equals pH. So our next step says to fill in the variables with numbers on paper. And it tells us to remember what capital P is. So that's capital P, that's capital B, and then of course the H. All right, so taking a look at capital P, remember that is perimeter of one of the two-dimensional bases. And remember, in a triangular prism, the two triangles are always the bases. So that top is the base, and this bottom of the entire 3D object, those are the two bases. So the triangles are always the two bases. Now, so looking for P, the perimeter, very easy. Perimeter is just the sum of all of the outsides. So we got side 1, side 2, side 3, so we add all those up together. So taking a look at this example that they give us, so imagine it as you're just looking at a two-dimensional shape. So we're just going to look at this side, and this side, because we're just looking at one of the bases. So it looks like we have 8, so I'm going to write 8. So we've got that one. We have this one over here. We have 6. So I'm going to put plus 6. And this one right here, don't confuse it for 5.2. This is 5.2 is the height of the 2D shape. So, but this length right here is 9. So if this length right here is 9, that means this length right here has to be 9. So we're going to add 9. So 8 plus 6 plus 9, we fill in all of that for P. And then for H, so remember our H, and I wrote a little note over in the back. So it says the H next to the P is the height of the 3D object. So remember the length from one base to the other, not the 2D shape. So remember there's two different types of heights. There's the height of the actual two-dimensional shape, which is from here to here, the 5.2, just looking at the 2D shape. And then there's the height of the actual 3D object, which is from one base to the other base. In this case, it would be 4. So we would plug in 4 for H, because the H that's always next to the P is always the height of the 3D object. So we plug this in the calculator. I'm going to go ahead and pull up Desmos. because in case you're doing this at home, that's where you'll have to do it. So remember, desmos.com/scientific. Let's see if that takes me there. Yep, it does. Okay, so I'm going to plug in. Let me just kind of make this a little bit smaller. What you can see. All right, so we're going to type in exactly like this. Open parentheses, 8 plus 6 plus 9, close parentheses, open parentheses again, so that indicates multiplication whenever you have a close and an open, and then type in 4 and close parentheses. So for the lateral, we should get 92. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that in. Oh, which it already is. So yeah, 92. So now finding the total. So notice on this class kit too, it says find the lateral and or total surface area. The page should have, so we should get whole numbers. But on the second page, which I guess I'll get to that a little bit later, let me just start with this. All right, so that's equal to 92. Oops. I clearly don't know how to use a mouse. Okay. We got 92 for that. Okay, so now we're going to get to, we're going to plug in 92. So now we get to the total. So remember the total is, and that's back on this chart, it's pH plus 2B. So I'm going to go ahead and write S equals pH plus 2B. So luckily we already found pH. So great, it's 92. So we're going to plug in 92 for both of pH. Carry down your plus. 2 is a constant. 2 doesn't change. Now it has a capital B. So capital B, I go over here. Remember, capital B is area of one of the two-dimensional bases. So we're dealing with a triangular prism. So that means that, you know, I'm going to do another triangle here as an example. Because sometimes you'll get two different types of triangles. So whenever you have a right triangle, the two legs, so remember this is the hypotenuse. Remember the hypotenuse is always the longest line that's opposite from the 90-degree angle. You don't use the hypotenuse as the base and height. The base and height you always use as use the two legs. So it's the two sides that form the 90-degree angle. So that would be your height, that would be your base. Doesn't matter what order you put them in because you're multiplying them two together anyway. However, the triangle that we have over here, our base is always going to be the side that is that touches the 90-degree angle, and the height is always from that 90-degree angle to the other vertex, the very top. So our base will be this bottom and our height. So that's how it is on this one. And we'll use this formula. B equals 1/2 base times height. So I'm gonna fill in for big B. So 2 times 1/2. So I'm gonna put in 0.5. Makes it a little bit easier just to do 0.5. So 0.5 times base and height. So our base, remember, is, so we're just looking at the two-dimensional shape. So we have a base of 9 times and a height from the 90-degree angle to the top of the vertex, which is 5.2. Whoops. I'm running out of room. Times 5.2. So then we'll type that in on the calculator. Oh, geez. All right, so we have 92. So right here, 92 plus 2, open parentheses, 0.5 times 9 times 5.2. Close parentheses. We get 138.8. So remember in ClassKick, you don't have to do units or anything, no units, no commas in case you get like numbers in the thousands, but you definitely do decimal points. So decimal points, and on here, they want you to round it to the nearest tenth. So this is already in the nearest tenth. It's just one unit. So it's 138.8. So you would type in 138.8, just like that. All right, one thing I did want to go over real quickly is a rectangular prism. So notice that you only have to find the total. So you're not, so technically you do have to find the lateral, but you're not just finding the lateral because the bases aren't identified for you. So whenever you're finding the total, you have to identify your own bases. And it doesn't matter which two bases you use, just as long as they're opposite from each other. So I'm going to go ahead and do top and bottom, because why not? And they are opposite from each other. So this is on top, this is on bottom. So top and bottom. I don't want to confuse these for variables. You get the point. This is top, this is bottom. So the height would be from one base to the other end of the base. So height would be 10 in that case. So, and you use the exact same formula. It's a prism, so you use the same formula as up here. All right, so I'm going to go over a cylinders one real quick. I'm going to go over number 2. All right, so it says a closed tube holds poster. I don't know what that's supposed to be, but anyway, the entire tube, including ends, will be painted. How many square inches of paint is needed? All right, so this is where you take out your formula chart. So we're dealing with the cylinder, and they want the total. So we're going to use 2 pi RH plus 2 pi r squared. It looks a little overwhelming, but it's not too bad once you get into the rhythm. So we got 2 pi RH plus 2 pi r squared. And it makes it easy because 2 pi stays the same. We don't plug in anything for 2 pi. So that means 2 pi, we're going to carry down the 2 pi. Our radius, we'll have to plug in the radius. Remember, the radius is always from the middle of the circle. So this is the base, this is the other base. So radius is always the middle of the circle to one end. So if they're telling us that this whole thing, they have this whole line here that's 6, that means the radius is going to be half of the 6. So this one's just going to be just a 3. So that means we're going to plug in 3 for the radius. In our height, so remember in this case, our height, this is the height of the entire 3D object. So remember, the height of the object is from one base to the other base, and the circles are always your bases. So we will plug in 5 for the height. Now, if we just wanted to find the lateral, this right here is conveniently just the lateral, but we're going to go ahead and find the total. So we're going to add on the 2 pi, our radius, which we already got as 3, and then we're going to square that. I'm going to plug this in for you real quickly. Get the calculator back up. Clear all. And then you just plug this into the calculator. So we got 2 pi, and then open parentheses 3, close parentheses, open again, 5, close, plus 2 pi, open parentheses 3, close, and then to the second power. And we get 150.79, and they want you to round to 1 decimal. So that means, so we're looking at, so we want to just express 1, so that means we're looking at the digit that's next to the 10th place. So we got the 7th, so we're looking at the 9. 9 causes us to round up, so that's this 7 becomes an 8, and everything else zeroes out. So it's going to be 150.8. So I'm just going to double check that real quickly. Yeah, 150.8. Right, and that's how you do surface area. So it's just a matter of knowing the formula and knowing what to plug in for each of those variables.